What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Some Premier League action to get to, but first, the Columbus Crew pick up another trophy, defeating LAFC in the League's Cup final 3-1. Two things I want to touch on from this game, like I said, before we get to some Premier League stuff. Number one, and this League's Cup run was a really good demonstration of the point I am about to make regarding this Columbus Crew team. Most of the time, when you have teams built this way that play this way, think Manchester City, think Bob Bradley's LAFC, whatever team you want. Manchester City is probably the best example. I think that's the closest thing we've got to what Wilfried Nancy is trying to do. Those teams typically struggle mightily in knockout tournaments. And I talk about this all the time in different aspects, but it makes sense. You are trying to control a game by dominating possession. In a single elimination situation, either your attack just isn't clicking that day, you give up a weird goal, you give up a goal playing out from the back, you give up a goal on a set piece, whatever it might be. One thing doesn't go according to plan, and all of a sudden, your strategy has to change. And not in the sense of, okay, if you're down a goal, obviously you're just going to try and get more possession and continue to dominate. But you got to be able to adapt to things that are going to happen in knockout tournaments. There's a reason Bob Bradley's LAFC didn't win an MLS Cup, didn't come particularly close, and Steve Cherundolo's won an MLS Cup and then got to MLS Cup final another time. There is a reason Manchester City win the Premier League consistently and have won the Champions League exactly once. There are too many examples of this. What separates the Columbus Crew is that they can blow your doors off the same way Manchester City can. Go ask LAFC about what happened earlier this season at BMO Field. But they don't have to do it that way. They were down against FC Cincinnati in the playoffs last season, Eastern Conference Final. They were down against Inter Miami. And they just continued to push and dominate the ball until they got the goals. They gave up a really bad goal at the very beginning against NYCFC. They fight their way back. Weren't particularly good in the game, but they find a way to get through. They give up another bad goal in the semifinals of the League's Cup against the Union. Pretty soon after they had taken the lead, kind of takes the air out of the building. What do? They regroup. They go get a couple more goals. They find a way to win the game. This one, they're dominating the first half. They score the goal right at the end of the first half. And then all of a sudden, LAFC comes out as a different team. They give up another set-piece goal. And they find a way to get the winner. And then they find a way to get a safety goal to clinch it. Two really, really late goals at the end to make it 3-1. This team is not flawless. They give up goals on set pieces. They give up goals playing out from the back. You can get at them. But they're able to adapt to whatever happens. They are really good situationally and really good at just making your life miserable by dominating the ball. Typically, those two things don't go together. The more you have seen this team evolve into one of the best in MLS history, and they are, especially if they can somehow find a way to win the Supporters' Shield and win another MLS Cup, they are doing things that have never been done in this league in terms of winning in the regular season and winning knockout tournaments. There is no disputing how great this team is. But part of that is also doing it in the regular season. They have not done that yet. That's why the Supporters' Shield is so important in this conversation. We'll see if they can get it. But for now, the conversation for me is they can just do this any way that they need to. It makes them so dangerous and it separates them from most other teams that play the way they do. Because Pep Guardiola has talked about this. When plan A doesn't work, they really, really struggle. To the extent that Manchester City can struggle. But you get my point. When they have lost in the Champions League, it's because things haven't gone to plan. They haven't been able to play the game the way they want to. Usually, that's the Achilles heel of teams built this way. But the Crew have done this every which way, blowing teams out and controlling games from taking a lead, blowing leads and finding a way to come back, coming from behind, multiple goals. They've done a little bit of everything. And so here they are, and of course it helps they get to play these games at home as the top seed because they won MLS Cup. But they found a way to do it, win Leagues Cup, and are continuing to put together a stretch here that is as impressive as any in MLS history. They're not there yet, because to me the Supporters Shield is a big part of it, as I explained earlier. But one step at a time, defending MLS Cup champions, lost in the final of the Champions Cup, won Leagues Cup. That is not an accident. It is a testament to the way Wilfried Nancy has built this team and their ability to be flexible and to win games and adapt to whatever kind of chaos gets thrown at them in these knockout situations. On the other side of this, LAFC. And I'm just gonna kind of leave it here. At some point, I would have a larger conversation about Steve Cherundolo. But I want to lay out some basic thoughts, because this game once again illustrated something that I haven't really gotten a chance to talk about, but I want to. He did such a good job, and I gave him credit for this when they won MLS Cup, transitioning this team from one that didn't know what to do when plan A didn't work to a multi-dimensional team that could break you down and could beat you on the counter and had a lot of what the Columbus Crew have now. That is why they won that MLS Cup. Last season, they went a little too far onto the counterattacking side. And when they ran into Columbus in the final and they didn't score the first goal, they really didn't. I know they got back into the game, but they really didn't have much to offer. There was no doubt who the better team was. So my question for this season was, can they get back to finding that balance? Because Cherundolo understands how to optimize this team, but it hasn't always worked that way. And I would still argue that they have significantly underachieved, considering the hype they get, the money they have, the players they can bring in, that any game they play in, they should walk onto that field and try and control it. And that first half, they sat there and they played on the counter and they let Columbus do whatever they wanted to. And when those two teams met in LAFC's stadium, Columbus blew them out of the water. At some point, they got to show up and play in these big games. And particularly against this team, which I would argue they should be specifically equipped to deal with as the most talented counterattacking based team in the league. All of the things that should cause Columbus problems are what LAFC are good at. Now you throw Giroux into the mix. He gets you a set piece goal in this game. So they come out in the second half and they do all of those things, and they're the better team in the second half, and they get back into this game, and it's almost impossible to beat Columbus in that building. There's no shame in losing this. But I just don't understand why they don't do this from the beginning. Why they don't embrace what they have, and they sit there on the counter, and they're not winning MLS Cup playing that way. They are not. They can win MLS Cup with what you saw in the second half. The combination of, it doesn't mean possession, but it means controlling the game by pressing, by keeping it in the opponent's half, and looking like the more dangerous team, like they did in that second half. I don't think this is super complicated, but it goes back and forth with them, and I'm just not exactly sure where they are. And it works. They were really good in that second half. Not good enough to win the game, but that's because they were so poor in the first half, and And also, the other epitome of this is the stat they showed in the first half on the broadcast. The LAFC have not won a game in any competition in which they haven't scored the first goal. That tells you all you need to know about what needs to be fixed, and I'm not sure is fixed yet. We're going to have to wait and see for the playoffs. Because it looks like it has gotten better this season. But then they come out in this game, and again, Sharundo has been able to fix this when he wants to. They fixed it at halftime. You got to give him credit. He can make those adjustments. I just don't understand why that's not plan A from the beginning. And I don't understand why there aren't more questions being asked about that. With the talent on this team, with the money at their disposal, they should never walk into a building and completely acquiesce to what the other team wants to do, even if it's the Crew. Again, that doesn't mean possession. But that game was played on the Crew's terms in the first half and LAFC's in the second half. It shouldn't take 45 minutes and another just toothless showing for LAFC to figure out they need to do something differently. That should have been plan A from the beginning. Outside of League's Cup, congratulations again to the Crew. A couple of real things real quick from the Premier League. Arsenal get the win against Aston Villa that they could not get last season. That was kind of the beginning of the end, so to speak. Wasn't a great performance. That game easily could have been 2-0 Ollie Watkins. He can't convert the sitter, and then David Raya makes a phenomenal save off of that rebound that Watkins was going to head back in. Looks like it's absolutely going into the goal, and Raya is able to get a hand to it. And then Leandro Trossard delivers again. He is such a good player. I don't understand why there were any questions when that transfer was made. That guy just delivers. He shows up, he produces. And they ultimately get the second. Bad moment for Emi Martinez. But they find a way to win this game. A game that obviously has some kind of emotional baggage from last season and what happened. That's an important step for Arsenal. These are the kind of games that they need to be able to win, because the combination, if they're going to surpass Manchester City, is they've got to be better against the non-top 3 teams. And by that I mean Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. And then they've got to win the battle between those 3 head-to-head again like they did last season. These were the kind of games that cost them a title. They get the win here. Really good sign on a day where they weren't particularly great. They still find a way to get the job done. And then I also want to talk about Brighton for a second. And I will also acknowledge the Noni Madueke Cole Palmer show that happened for Chelsea. I still am not convinced. That's a really, really concerning thing for Wolves, who will have a really tough start to the season schedule-wise. I need to see more from Chelsea to believe that this is all of a sudden fixed and it's going to work. But that was quite impressive, statistically very impressive in terms of the fact you could have a hat trick and one player setting them all up like that. But I don't have too much to say on it because I'm not convinced that's what Chelsea's going to look like this season. I'm much more convinced about Brighton after what we've seen from 2 games. It's 2 wins. They beat Manchester United. And the big question, and you can go back and listen to my Soccer Story episode with Paul Dorsey, where we kind of talked about a little bit of this, was it feels like for the first time things didn't go to plan for Brighton. So Kieran, we kind of was supposed to be there. You lose to Zerbi. You have the replacement lined up. It doesn't actually happen. You're bringing in all these new players. Kaoru Mitoma's coming back from, he was injured last season. Okay. Clearly they had room for improvement. And you also, by the way, hire Fabian Herzler, who in many ways is a very Brighton hire in the sense that nobody really knew who he was and he didn't have this long track record at big clubs and all of that. And he's, significantly younger than some of his players, a la James Milner. But they go out, they get these 2 wins. They look like the same team from 2 seasons ago that is absolutely one of the best 6 in the league. No, 2 games doesn't mean they're going to finish in a Europa League spot. They're going to push for a Champions League spot. Of course not. But to me, it is already clear that last season was the aberration. And by the way, this is happening without a lot of contributions from all of these new players. because they have that much depth now. It is absolutely remarkable. You go look at their bench, you look at the players who you expect to make more contributions as they kind of get situated and get settled. It is really, really promising what Brighton are doing. And oh, by the way, you still got Matoma there. You know, they've got multiple, I think it's 5 players with goal contributions already. 3 players have 2 or more. It's, yeah, I think it's 5 players with goal contributions, 3 with multiple. I believe those are the numbers. I was never sold on United, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that side of this. I want to focus on the Brighton side. To me, I'm bought in. Again, I don't know exactly what that means in terms of where they're going to finish, because I also believe Newcastle are going to be there. I don't see Aston Villa having a horrible season. Liverpool, Arsenal, City off to good starts. But there was this question of, is this kind of the end of this era for Brighton? Are they taking this step back permanently, or was it a blip on the radar? To me, it is very clear already it was a blip on the radar, and they're going to have a very, very good season. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch yet again. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.